Remember that feeling of constantly striving, of living up to invisible rules you didn't even set. For decades, society's whispers told us who to be, what to achieve, and how to feel. But what if turning 50 is less about aging and more about a radical act of liberation? Get ready to discover the profound joy of finally shedding those decades-old burdens and redefining happiness entirely on your own terms. If that question lands somewhere in your chest, you're not imagining it. A lot of women feel something shift as they approach or pass 50, not always loudly. Sometimes it shows up as fatigue that rest doesn't fix, sometimes as impatience with things that used to feel normal, sometimes as a quiet thought you didn't have time to listen to before. You might still be doing all the right things, showing up, handling responsibilities, being dependable. But underneath that, there's often a sense of having carried too much for too long. Not just tasks or roles, but expectations. Ideas about who you were supposed to be by now, what your life should look like, how you should feel about it. For decades, many of us followed a script without questioning where it came from. Study, work, build a career, build a family, look a certain way, stay pleasant, stay grateful, don't complain, don't want too much, don't fall behind, keep going. And you did. You kept going. But turning 50 has a way of slowing the noise just enough for you to hear yourself again. It doesn't automatically bring clarity, but it often brings honesty. You start noticing what feels heavy, what feels forced, what no longer fits. This video isn't about rebellion or blowing up your life. It's about something quieter and deeper. It's about letting go. Letting go of rules you didn't choose. Letting go of pressure that no longer serves you. Letting go of the idea that happiness has to look a certain way. We're going to talk about how expectations get woven into us so early that we stop seeing them as optional. How they shape our choices, our self-worth, and our energy. And how reaching this stage of life gives you a rare opportunity to set some of them down. If you felt a mix of relief and sadness about getting older, that makes sense. Relief that some things no longer matter as much. Sadness for how long you tried to meet standards that were never yours. This is a space to name that gently, without judgment, without urgency. Turning 50 doesn't mean you've missed your chance. It may mean you're finally in a position to live with more truth than pressure. And that shift, while unsettling at first, can be deeply joyful. By the time you reach 50, you've been carrying expectations for most of your life, not in a way you consciously agreed to, more like an invisible backpack you were handed early on and never really took off. Some of those expectations came from family, how to behave, what success looks like, what's acceptable to want. Some came from culture, from media, from watching other women and absorbing what was praised and what was quietly criticized. You learned often without words how to be good, helpful, attractive enough, but not too much, ambitious but not threatening, independent but still accommodating, strong but not inconvenient. Over time, these messages settle in. They become habits, automatic responses. You stop questioning them because they feel like common sense. You might notice it in how you speak about yourself, downplaying achievements, apologizing before you even say what you need, feeling uneasy when you rest or say no, feeling responsible for other people's comfort. This constant striving for approval is exhausting, even if you don't label it that way. It keeps you scanning, adjusting, measuring yourself against standards that keep shifting. For many women, this shows up as a low-level tension that's always there. You're doing fine, but you're never fully at ease. You're successful, but it doesn't feel as satisfying as you thought it would. You're busy, but somehow still feel behind. The backpack gets heavier over time, especially when you add expectations about aging, how you should look, how relevant you should remain, how gracefully you're supposed to accept changes without making anyone uncomfortable. At some point, your body and mind start pushing back. You feel less willing to perform, less interested in proving yourself, less tolerant of nonsense. This isn't you becoming bitter or difficult. It's you becoming honest. Taking a moment to notice what you've been carrying can be powerful. You might realize that some expectations aren't even yours. They were borrowed, inherited, absorbed without consent. You don't have to drop everything at once. Just noticing the weight is a start. Asking yourself where it came from, whether it still belongs with you. The invisible backpack doesn't come off all at once, but even loosening one strap can bring relief. And that relief often comes with a surprising feeling. Not fear, not guilt, but lightness. Because deep down, part of you has been ready to put it down for a long time. Turning 50 has a way of clarifying things, not all at once and not always gently, but clearly enough that it's hard to ignore. It's not just a birthday, it's a point where time feels different. Not scarce exactly, but precious in a more honest way. For many women, this age brings a kind of internal pause. You start asking questions you didn't have the energy for before. Questions about why you've been doing certain things, who you've been doing them for, whether the effort still makes sense. It's not uncommon to have moments where you think, I don't want to keep living like this. Not in a dramatic way, more like a quiet realization, a knowing that something needs to shift, even if you don't yet know what that looks like. This is often when the old pressures start to feel louder, not quieter. The expectations around success, appearance, productivity, and relevance don't disappear at 50, but your tolerance for them changes. What once felt manageable starts to feel intrusive. You might notice you're less willing to explain yourself, less interested in chasing approval, less patient with obligations that drain you without giving anything back. That can feel unsettling, especially if you've built much of your identity around being capable and accommodating. At the same time, there can be moments of clarity that feel almost surprising. You realize that some of the rules you've been following were never mandatory, that certain goals you worked toward weren't actually yours, that some fears you've carried no longer hold the same power. This age often brings aha moments, but they're rarely dramatic. They show up in everyday situations. Saying no without guilt, choosing rest without apology, letting go of comparisons that once consumed you. Priorities tend to shift here. Inner peace starts to matter more than external success. How your life feels becomes more important than how it looks. You begin valuing depth over breadth, meaning over momentum. For many women, this shift is both freeing and disorienting. You might grieve the years spent striving, or feel anger about the pressure you absorbed, or feel relief that you no longer want what you once chased. All of these reactions are valid. Turning 50 doesn't mean you have all the answers. It means you're finally asking the right questions. And those questions open the door to change that feels intentional instead of reactive. This stage isn't about starting over from scratch. It's about choosing more consciously, about noticing where you've outgrown expectations that once shaped you. And that awareness, even when it's uncomfortable, is often the beginning of something lighter and more honest. For much of our lives, many of us have been working toward an image of a perfect life. Not one we invented ourselves, but one we absorb slowly. through movies, magazines, family stories, and quiet comparisons. It usually includes a successful career or at least a respectable one, a stable relationship, a family that looks functional from the outside, a body that ages without complaint, a personality that's pleasant, capable, and grateful. This blueprint is powerful because it's rarely questioned. It's presented as normal, as the natural outcome of making good choices and working hard. And when parts of your life don't match it, it's easy to assume you've done something wrong. By 50, many women realize how suffocating this blueprint has been. Even if you checked most of the boxes, there's often a sense that you've been performing a version of life rather than fully inhabiting it. You might feel this around work, the pressure to stay productive and relevant, to prove your worth through output, or around money. The idea that security must look a certain way, even if it costs you peace. Relationships can carry their own set of expectations. How close you should be, how forgiving, how available, how much you should compromise to keep things smooth. And then there's appearance. The constant messaging about looking younger, smaller, more effortless, as if aging were something to manage quietly, without inconvenience. Deconstructing this blueprint doesn't mean rejecting everything in your life. It means questioning what truly matters to you now, separating what you genuinely value from what you were taught to value. This process can feel destabilizing. You might wonder who you are without these markers, without the striving, without the measuring. Practical steps here don't need to be grand. They can be as simple as noticing when you feel pressure and asking where it's coming from, or giving yourself permission to redefine success in a way that prioritizes well-being. Letting go of the perfect life doesn't mean settling for less. It means choosing alignment over approval, choosing what fits over what impresses. Many women find that as they dismantle these old ideals, space opens up, space for rest, for creativity, for relationships that feel mutual instead of obligatory. The blueprint loses its grip not all at once, but piece by piece. And with each piece released, life starts to feel more spacious. Not perfect, but real. Letting go doesn't usually happen in one bold decision. It happens quietly, in moments where you realize you don't want to carry something anymore. An expectation, a role, a version of yourself that once made sense but now feels heavy. When women begin to consciously release these external pressures, the first thing they often notice isn't joy. It's space, mental space, emotional space, a sense that there's room to breathe again. You might feel it when you stop explaining your choices, when you no longer feel the need to justify how you spend your time, when you say no without immediately rehearsing reasons in your head. These moments can feel strange at first, almost uncomfortable, because they go against habits built over decades. But with that discomfort comes energy. Not the frantic kind, but a steadier kind. The kind that was previously tied up in managing expectations and keeping things running smoothly. Many women describe this stage as feeling lighter, even if nothing external has changed yet. Their lives may look the same on the surface, but internally, something has shifted. They're no longer constantly measuring themselves against invisible standards. This is where new possibilities often begin to emerge. Some women reconnect with interests they put aside long ago: painting, writing, learning a language. Others rethink relationships, setting boundaries that feel more honest. Some pursue long-deferred dreams, not because they expect them to lead anywhere specific, but because they finally feel free to try. These changes don't always look dramatic. Sometimes they're subtle, choosing comfort over appearance, choosing rest over productivity, choosing authenticity over approval. The joy that comes from letting go isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself as happiness all the time. Often it shows up as relief, as calm, as a sense of being more at home in your own life. Living authentically means allowing your values to guide you, even when they don't match what's expected. It means trusting your internal compass after years of being told to follow external markers. Letting go doesn't erase the past, it honors it. You carried those expectations because you were doing the best you could with what you knew. Releasing them now isn't failure, it's growth. And growth at this stage of life often feels quieter, but deeper, more rooted, more sustaining. The liberation of letting go isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to yourself. Once you begin letting go of external expectations, a natural question arises. If I'm not chasing what I was told to want, then what does happiness look like for me now? This can feel unsettling at first. Many women realize they've spent so long adapting to others' needs that they're not entirely sure what they want anymore. And that's okay. Clarity doesn't arrive fully formed. Redefining happiness is less about creating a perfect vision and more about paying attention. Paying attention to what nourishes you, what drains you, what brings a sense of ease instead of pressure. For some women, happiness becomes quieter, more about peace than excitement, more about feeling grounded than being impressive. For others, it includes adventure, creativity, or change. There's no correct version. What matters is that your definition comes from within, not from comparison or expectation. Creating a personal manifesto for happiness doesn't require writing anything down unless you want to. It can simply live in how you make decisions, choosing relationships that feel mutual, work that aligns with your energy, days that include rest without guilt. Future-proofing this sense of joy means learning to recognize new pressures as they appear, because they will. Expectations don't disappear entirely. They just change form. Staying aware helps you decide which ones to pick up and which to leave behind. You might notice moments where you're tempted to fall back into old patterns, overcommitting, over-explaining, measuring yourself against others. These moments aren't setbacks, they're reminders. A gentle call to action here isn't about doing more. It's about releasing one expectation you're ready to shed. Maybe it's the expectation to always be available, or to look a certain way, or to keep pushing when you're tired. Choose one. Let it go consciously. See how it feels. Happiness after 50 isn't about achieving a final state. It's about creating a life that feels livable, honest, and aligned. A life where joy isn't postponed, but allowed. And that permission, once given, tends to ripple outward into your relationships, your choices, your sense of self. Redefining happiness on your own terms isn't selfish. It's an act of care, one that honors who you've been and who you're becoming. If you're still here, I want to take a moment to honor that. Not because listening until the end is an achievement, but because it often means something inside you was quietly nodding along. Maybe you felt seen. Maybe you felt understood. Maybe you just felt less alone in thoughts you've been carrying for a long time. Letting go at this stage of life isn't about giving up. It's about putting down what was never meant to be carried forever. Expectations served a purpose once. They helped you survive. They helped you belong. They helped you build a life in a world that had very clear ideas about who women should be. But you are not the same woman you were when you first picked them up. Reaching 50 has a way of bringing that truth into focus. Not harshly, but honestly. You start to feel the weight of what you've been doing out of habit instead of desire. You notice how much energy has gone into meeting standards that don't actually make you happier. And with that awareness comes a choice. Not a dramatic one, a quiet one. You can keep carrying everything because it's familiar. Or you can begin asking yourself, gently and without judgment, what you're ready to release. Letting go doesn't mean your life suddenly becomes perfect or easy. It means it becomes more yours. It means your decisions come from alignment instead of obligation. It means you stop asking, does this look right? And start asking, does this feel right? That shift can feel unsettling at first. You may worry about disappointing others, about being misunderstood, about stepping outside a role people are used to you playing. Those fears are real, and they deserve compassion, but so does the part of you that's tired of striving, the part of you that wants more peace, more honesty, more room to breathe. Joy after 50 often arrives quietly. It's not always excitement or celebration. Sometimes it's relief, a sense of calm, a feeling that you no longer have to prove yourself in the same ways. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need a clear plan for the rest of your life. You just need to keep listening to yourself, one choice at a time. If there's one thing to take with you from this conversation, let it be this. You are allowed to redefine what matters. You are allowed to let go of expectations that no longer fit. You are allowed to choose happiness that feels honest, even if it looks different than what you were taught to want. This chapter of life isn't about shrinking. It's about simplifying, about shedding layers that were added for survival, not fulfillment. And in that shedding, many women discover something unexpected. Not loss, but lightness. Not emptiness, but space. Space to live more fully, more gently, and more truthfully. You've carried enough. You're allowed to put some of it down now. Before you go, I want to invite you to join this community of women rediscovering themselves after 40. If you found comfort, clarity, or even just a moment of peace in this video, please subscribe. It helps this channel grow, and it helps more women find the support they deserve. And if you have a second, leave a like and a comment. I would love to hear what resonated with you the most. Thank you for being here. Truly.